Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki, Shri Shri Vijay Gauranga Dayal Nitai Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Is this being recorded? Of course, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to share any military secrets. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Today we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, the 7th canto, chapter 1. We'll have text 2, which doesn't have a purport. So, oh yes, thank you. Chapter 7, Canto 7, Chapter 5. And we are going to, first of all, find it, and then we'll do the text number 2, which is on the board but doesn't have a purport, so we will do also text number 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tauragya prapitam balam praladam nayakovidam atayam asatu patyan anyam chasura balakam. We are seeing the word by word on the screen. Tahu, those two, Sanda and Amarka, Raghya, by the king, Prapitam, sent, Balam, the boy, Praladam, named Pralad, Naya Kovidhan, who was aware of moral principles, Patayam Asatu, instructed, Patyan, books of material knowledge, Anyan, other, Cha, also, Asura Balakan, sons of the Asuras. Translation: Prahlad Maharaj was already educated in devotional life, but when his father sent him to those two sons of Shukracharya to be educated, they accepted him at their school along with their other sons of the Asuras. Text 3, I just read. Yat tatra guruna proktam sushruvenu papata cha nasadu manasa mene swaparasad grahashrayam. Prahlad certainly heard and recited the topics of politics and economics taught by the teachers. But he understood that political philosophy involves considering someone a friend and someone else an enemy. And thus, he did not like it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Politics involves accepting one group of men as enemies and another group as friends. Everything in politics is based on this philosophy, and the entire world, especially at the present, is engrossed in it. The public is concerned with friendly countries and friendly groups, or enemy countries and enemy groups. But, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, a learned person does not make distinctions between enemies and friends. Devotees, especially, do not create friends and enemies. A devotee sees that every living being is part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivam shojiva bhutaha. Therefore, a devotee treats friends and enemies equally by trying to educate them both in Krishna consciousness. Of course, atheistic men do not follow the instructions of pure devotees, but instead consider a devotee their enemy. A devotee, however, never creates a situation of friendship and enmity. Although Prahlad Maharaj was obliged to hear the instructions of Shanda and Amarka, he did not like the philosophy of friends and enemies, which forms the basis of politics. He was not interested in this philosophy. Mama Gyanati Mirandasya Gananjana Sarapaya Shaksharamnithamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namo Namam Shukta Krishna Buddhishman Jamadhan Swami Namo Shapadani Tiger Gauradeng Namo Vishwapadaya Krishna Vestai Bhutale Shrimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada wrote this purport half a century ago, but we see that it's still relevant. The entire world, especially at the present, is engrossed in it, meaning the philosophy of somebody is an enemy and somebody is a friend. If you read the news, even superficially, even if you look at the headlines, you see that every day, especially nowadays, there are different conflicts in the world, and those generally capture the main headlines. Just yesterday, for instance, there was a big meetings between the leaders of Europe, some of the countries in Europe, 7, 8 leaders of the countries in Europe, and the leader of the country named Ukraine with the leader of the country named United States of America, discussing how to deal in a way that this war, this invasion by Russia, and this war which is going on since 3.5 years can be somewhat stopped. And there is a lot of negotiation, not of feelings. And in the same newspaper that you can see, there is obviously the conflict in Gaza, and so on. So what Srila Prabhupada writes 50 years ago is perhaps even more relevant today. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada makes this, we could say, general statements that devotee, let me read. Devotee sees that every living being is a part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, a devotee treats friends and enemy equally by trying to educate them both in Krishna consciousness. And by doing that, he attracts some friends and he attracts some enemies. Atheistic men do not follow the instructions of pure devotees, but instead consider devotee their enemy. So, how should we act? We know that we cannot imitate the great devotees. We have to follow the great devotees, and Prahlad Maharaj is one of the 12 Mahajans, the main references in devotional service. At the same time, of course, we cannot literally imitate them. Just like I was thinking, Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, the third from your left, on the Parampara, obviously was a extraordinarily advanced Vaishnava. He was the guru of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur upon the recommendation of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we, of course, worship him, and we have the pranam, that he was an ocean of rasa, he was the personification of vipralamba, of separation in devotional service. So there is no doubt about his devotional caliber. At the same time, the way he lived and the way he occasionally preached when people came to him was not exactly what we do, or what, say, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did, or Srila Prabhupada did. Sometimes we hear this radical preaching. Somebody will come and say, Maharaj or Babaji, whatever they will call him, can you give me some instruction? They will just say, leave your family, come sit with me and chant Hare Krishna all day. which is generally not what other acharyas have recommended, because people are not ready for that. So similarly, Prahlad Maharaj did not want to see friends and enemies, but in the world we had to see friends and enemies. We had to see that there are people favorable to the Krishna consciousness movement and people who are unfavorable to the Krishna consciousness movement. Or people, Jai, Jai, Jagaranga Nitai Ki Jai. There are people who come to contribute and people who come to take. Like for instance, sorry, there was this Subhas Chandra Bose. Most of you heard about him, maybe some of you did not. Subhas Chandra Bose was a military leader from Bengal, and he was the leader of the, what was called Indian National Army, INA, something like that. There was an army created by him to get rid of the British in India. And so he was recruiting young people. So he came to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Of course, we know his preaching was quite successful. At one point, he had 64 branches, and he had many brahmacharis. So Subhas Chandra Bose was attracted. So many young men are coming and join the ashram. They should join our army and fight with the British. In fact, Subhas Chandra Bose came also here to Germany. He met with Hitler. There are photos of that meeting, and he made an arrangement with Hitler that whatever Indian soldiers were fighting with the British, they were captured by the Germans or by the Japanese, because Japanese were fighting in that area in Asia. They will be given to Subhas Chandra Bose to fight for the independence of India, because they were Indians anyway. So anyway, so this is all politics and the diplomacy. So this Subhas Chandra Bose came to Saraswati Thakur and say, look, we have this great mission of freeing India, and you're recruiting so many boys in your ashram, they should fight. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he just told him, come on, look how skinny they are. They're completely useless for military service. Let them take some free shot and chant Hare Krishna. What can they do? You know? So basically, he just got rid of him, almost in a humorous way, right? He didn't start preaching, no, the freedom of the soul is more important than the freedom. It's just like, he got rid of him like that. So sometimes, although we may not like, I don't think any of us joined the movement to learn diplomacy, to learn politics, or to be in some photo ops with the politicians, right? Meeting this, meeting that. But sometimes we need to do it. There is for me, one of the most touching stories in Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita was in Vrindavan. At one point, the governor of Uttar Pradesh came, and Srila Prabhupada was super sick, was bedridden. He was, the book says, he was practically delirious with fever. It just was, we could say colloquially, he was out of it, okay, physically. In fact, the book describes it took about 5 minutes just to put his tilak on. 5 minutes just to put his tilak, all trembling. And after putting his tilak, he asked, did I put my tilak on? Imagine the level of. And this governor, besides was a Muslim, but that's a detail, was a governor. He came there, and Srila Prabhupada made the point, I need to receive him as the governor. And he came to the temple, Krishna Balaram Mandir. And the devotees were shocked because Srila Prabhupada stood there waiting for the governor. And then the governor started speaking for, 20 minutes or so, just about industrialization. which was one of the teams Srila Prabhupada was against, but he respectfully stood there, listened, then he sat down, he took prasad with the governor, and the devotees, especially those close to him, it was like, they were really, really fearful. He may leave his body. Then finally the governor left, and Srila Prabhupada just collapsed on the bed. He has a super, super high fever. But he made a point, and this was not just the only case. Meet politicians, those who are in charge, regardless of their political views. We are friends of whoever friends, and we are available to help anybody who is running any country. We are available to anybody because we could give good advice if they want to anybody. Muslim, Christians, Buddhists, atheists. We could contribute. This politic group, these politicians, we can work with anybody, but we don't align ourselves with anybody. So sometimes we do have enemies or opponents. Like just a few days ago, one devotee from a city in Russia wrote me, and we were in touch for other things. Then he said, Prabhu, you work with community development, congregational development. We have a lot of problem in our temple. There are some devotees who are constantly criticizing the management. And somehow they create such an atmosphere that the people stop coming to the Sunday program. Our Sunday program has decreased in attendance because there are these people who are creating such an atmosphere of just toxic. They're creating a toxic environment. People don't want to come to the temple anymore. So what to do? So obviously, I don't know the situation. I've never been to the city, and I don't know what are the complaints. Some complaints may even be legitimate. I really don't know. So what I told him is that, look, sometimes you got to apply the standards of political interaction. Sama, Dana, Veda, Danda, which is explained by Chanakya Pandit and explained by Shandayana Marka. These are 4 steps in dealing with opponents. Sama means you pacify them, you talk with them. You talk with them. In this case, could be something like, Prabhu, look, we are on the same team. We are. What you're doing is not really good for anybody. It's not improving the situation anyway. You talk with the person and try to pacify. If that doesn't work, then dana. This is really political. Dana literally means giving money or giving a position. In this case, could be, look, if you want to improve, take a role in the temple, become, I don't know, vice president or whatever, and help improving from inside. So you give some position, you give some role, or you give some facility. And of course, these are 4, but there are many subsets in each. That doesn't work. Bheda means difference. So you create difference in their camp. That's like in Latin they say divide et impera, divide and rule, which is still very, very famous. Divide and rule. In other words, you create conflict between the opponents, and so you weaken them. And then at the end, if that doesn't work, danda means punishment. So I told him, sometime maybe you just need to ban these people, that they cannot come to the temple. Ultimately, the temple, it's a private religious institution, and we have the right and sometimes the duty to keep people out, the people who disturb. Like in some temples, for instance, very clearly, sometimes they even write it outside. If the Ritviks are not allowed. If you come there and you're a Ritvik and you preach Ritvikism, you're not allowed. I saw once in Saw Street in London that something, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember what was written there, like if you come here to bring people to Narayana Maharaj, we will ask you to go. Sometimes you got to create boundaries. No, so this is a private thing. You create a disturbance, or you promote something which is not in line with what we are promoting, you have to go. Huh? So this is the world of conflict, and this is the age of conflict. So double conflict, and so sometimes we got to deal with that. There was this groups of vandals. Basically, there's some redneck vandals in New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan is in the Appalachians. There are many rough people. They are actually very, very rough. And they were attacking New Vrindavan. They were coming with their bikes, I don't know, throwing stones, disturbing. So Srila Prabhupada wrote in a letter, you can still find it in the database. He said, okay, so you get guns and shoot at them. Srila Prabhupada writes that. Maybe not to kill them, no, to make them afraid, scare them. And I think that, I don't know 100%, but the devotees did that and they did not. No. Because with bullies, you cannot be soft. They only understand force. They only understand power. So you got to, sometimes you got to show power, if you can show power. So Srila Prabhupada said, get guns and shoot at them. That will solve the problem. I mean, these are very stupid people. You cannot just engage in a reasonable philosophical discussion. We were just in Berlin 1 week ago, and there were some vandals who threw paint on the temple. So you can see there is Hare Krishna temple, the picture of Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, and there's some gray paint on it. And so before that, years before, somebody came with a hammer and broke all the windows of the temple. Which is a major damage. It's thousands, I'm sure, thousands, at least hundreds of euros, huge windows on the street. So there are enemies in this world that you got to deal with that. The devotees there, they went to the police put some CCTV cameras, and even the local, I don't know, not FBI, FBI is in America, but the corresponding agency is doing something, no? Because obviously it can't, in Berlin, right, in the capital of the country, they can't allow these things to happen. There's some peaceful religion, whatever religion could be, in this case Hare Krishna, they cannot allow people to disturb like that. It's a crime. So we are in the world of duality. So there are friends and there are enemies. And sometimes we got to deal with them. We inspire ourselves to Prahlad Maharaj and his equal vision. Srila Prabhupada quotes the Bhagavad Gita, that a sadhu, a saintly person, sees everybody as equal, because he says, Mava Mamso Jiva Bhuta. He quotes, Mava Mamso Jiva Bhuta. So they see that everybody is a part and parcel of Krishna, they're all children of Krishna, but some are more bewildered than others. Some are more inimical than others. And so we got to deal. During Srila Prabhupada's time, there was this deprogrammers. Some of you, or maybe all of you have heard. They were basically criminals who, I don't know to what extent they were ideological or they were just doing for money. They were going to the parents of the devotees and saying, look, we can cure your children. We can cure your daughter. We can cure your son. And they were taking a lot of money. They would kidnap the devotees and keep them in isolation. And they would just preach that the Krishna consciousness is bad. No, they're really controlling your mind. They're brainwashing you. And in some case, some devotees were were deprogrammed. I mean, they lost their faith because for days and days and days they don't let you chant. They burn your japa. Nothing devotional. Then they say crazy things about Srila Prabhupada, about the movement, and some devotees lost their faith. Some devotees were stronger than before. And I remember I was talking with a devotee of Jewish background, and he was saying his parents spent $30,000 to deprogram him. $30,000 then, 30, 40 years ago. So it's much more. It would be maybe $100,000 now. So then, and he couldn't, it completely bounced. He was not affected at all. So then I said, so your parents must be feeling bad that you remain a devotee. He told me, mostly they're feeling bad about the $30,000. I mean, can you imagine you spend $30,000, nothing changes. So this was a big thing. Some of you have heard the name, Ted Patrick. Ted Patrick was the leader of the programmers. He had a business. Now, I don't know if he ended up in jail or so. Anyway, this is all the old-time stories. If you speak with Anuttama Prabhu, he will tell you a lot because they had to deal directly with that. And then there was this court case in New York. If you read the Lilamrita, it was a major pivotal time for the Hare Krishna movement because they were trying to completely delegitimize and say this movement is dangerous for society and cannot be allowed legally to exist. And the devotees were risking big time in jail. Some of you know Tridas Prabhu, temple president in Bologna, in Italy. He's originally from America. He was one of those devotees in the court case. And he told me personally that he could have escaped and gone to India because he was risking a lot, but he was asked to stay and face the judge. And finally, and the devotees who come to Mayapur talk with Srila Prabhupada, they say this, what to say, they say this, what to say. Srila Prabhupada was very belligerent, very assertive. He say, you bring all our books, bring the whole Bhagavatam, and this is our proof. That ask them, demand, you have to read all the books, and then we talk. So finally, it was a major victory for ISKCON because the judge just dismissed all the charges. I don't remember, but he made a beautiful sentence. I don't remember exactly the word, but he said, this is an ancient religion, and we have in America, we have freedom of religion. We cannot just stop people joining a religion that we don't like. So it was a major success. Srila Prabhupada was actually, if I remember correctly, Srila Prabhupada said that it was right to the judge, thank you very much, because it was very good. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes we may lose in court. Anyway, so up to what time we go generally, Prabhu? Rule? What's the rule, Prabhu? 9 o'clock. I mean, we can finish early, but on this, any questions or comments, reflections, or episodes, experience you want to share on this topic? You have something else to say? We have plenty of time. I don't want you to become my enemies looking at the watch. But so far, any question or comments? Any experience you had facing inimical situation in a university preaching or anywhere? Bali, there's a lot of enmity there, right? With the local Hindus. They have their conceptions, and sometimes you got to, as they say, play ball. You got to be diplomatic. In Bali, for instance, when you do a public program, a Ratha Yatra, devotees must wear some sort of small turban, a little headgear, They have to, right? It would be considered a huge insult if you don't. I don't know why, because it's like, what this has to do with chanting Hare Krishna. But you see the photos of the Bali, Ratayatra, and other program. All the male devotees have this little thing on the head, and they have to wear it. They have to wear it. There's no if or buts. They have to wear it. So you see even sannyasis wearing this thing, because don't ask me why. Probably Tägliche Prabhu can explain, but you got to deal with that.
Yeah, actually in Bali we have a custom, Hindu custom in Bali. We have their own clothes. So when we want to do something, we must be connected with this group, Hindu group. Since we are Hare Krishna banned in Bali since 85, 86 ban. So until now the ban is not lifted yet, but devotees coming out joining like anything. So when the government, new government taken place, since they got the little government, it doesn't like Hare Krishna. Actually the brother devotee, the little government, devotee's brother. Because he doesn't like his brother become devotee. So now that the inimical brother become a leader. And then it stopped Hare Krishna. By putting that Hare Krishna is banned a long time, but why exists now? So we fight against them. So the way what he did, that okay, you can exist, but you have to follow our custom. That means at least you have to use this as a cloth, and then Bali is cloth. Because actually in Bali is why we use this kind of thing. Our belief in Bali that this actually the cloth is a religious cloth. Before we go to temple, so we have to use this one. That means we have our mind. So the mind should be tight.
Acha.
Should be controlled.
So maybe our deity worship ministry wants to adopt it for ISKCON. Before we go to the deities, our mind should be controlled. So we got to tie it to this thing.
We call it udal.
Udal.
Yeah, udal we call it.
Acha.
So that means udal means adong. The one God is also there. Both. So according to this kind of system, they have to adopt. And then
so sometimes you got to compromise. You have to exist. Yes.
I'd like to comment on the thing of the cloth. Essentially, it's a Vedic tradition. So wearing turbans, Prabhupada introduced wearing, for ladies to cover the head. There's similar meaning. I remember my auntie telling me that, to me, my dear son, when you were sitting on the vyas, why don't you wear a turban? Because your grandfather, all of them were sitting like that. So it's a Vedic tradition, actually. We don't follow it here because the Gaudiyas don't follow it. For the rest in India, even in Keshavi temple in Mathura, you see the Pandas, they wear this, turban. So it is nothing to do like oh, it's out of Gaudiya Vaishnavism or something. It's nice, especially when you are. See, when I had hair as a student, I never had any problem with the sun. But then I start shaving, I get sunstrokes. And then one devotee doctor told me, why don't you first try this cream sunblock? It works for sun. Otherwise, cover your head because sunblock is very expensive. So it's nice that we can do unify it and make it more cultural. Like nothing with the Buddha Swami had this. We can also cloth on the head. You remember? It was all unified Gurukul. For sure. Like that.
Hare Krishna. I know a devotee who always wear a turban, but unfortunately, he looks like a lobotomy patient. Lobotomy patient. Lobotomy? Anyway, this is just, so anyway. So, but the principle we are talking is that sometimes there is opposition and sometimes we got to compromise. Like in some countries, in the next door in France, it took 40 years for the devotees to be recognized as a religious group. So sometimes you got to compromise. You try to be recognized by the government as a religious group, which obviously gives the several advantage in taxation and protection. And sometimes you only get maybe you are a non-profit, which is much lower, right? Anybody can be a non-profit. So yeah, sometimes you got to compromise. Not compromise the principles, but Sometimes just to exist, you got to accept certain impositions. Could be the headgear in Bali, or a particular statute in some other place. Like for instance, in Singapore, the movement was banned, and it's actually still banned. ISKCON, official ISKCON. They know we are ISKCON, we have a temple, they know we are ISKCON, but we cannot be called ISKCON. So it's called Gita Reading Society. The government knows perfectly we are ISKCON and everything, but we got to keep the formality, the appearance. We are not ISKCON. We are a Gita Reading Society. And if you want to exist, you got to do certain things. And sometimes, of course, the devotees, see, Srila Prabhupada says, the devotees do not create friends and enemies. In other words, they don't act in a way to create friends. It's like, for instance, Yudhishthir Maharaj. One name of Yudhishthir Maharaj was Ajatta Shatru, that his enemy was never born. But the whole battle of Kurukshetra was to defeat him. The whole battle was to kill Maharaj Yudhishthir. No? So how can you say, he has no enemy, everybody was his enemy. But he did not act in a way to create enemy. He was dharmic. And of course, sometimes some people don't like. When you're dharmic, people don't like. I heard, so maybe some Mahabharata expert can confirm or deny, that even Duryodhan, at the beginning of the battle, said, don't kill Yudhishthir. Just capture him, because you got to make him prisoner, but don't kill him. So even Duryodhan, kind of number one enemy, he liked Yudhishthir Maharaj. He didn't want to hurt him more than necessary. Is it true?
There is some political reason why he said that. If you capture him, then he's a slave, and all of them are then slaves. If he gets killed, they can need somebody else to follow him, and you still have to battle.
I'm emphasizing that people liked him as a person. Politically, they may be the enemy, but they respect him. Like I know, for instance, in Italy there was the chief of the Communist Party. Now the Communist Party is zero, but before was the strongest Communist Party in Europe. When he died, even the leader of the right wing went to see his body. Now they keep the body for one day like that, because they're completely against each other politically, theoretically, ideologically, but they respect each other. It's a man of integrity, and was an enemy, was a rival, but I respect. So what we went to Yudhishthir Maharaj? So at the same time, our devotees, we, including myself, sometimes we act in a way which create more agitation, more rivalry than necessary. Because sometimes we give some fanatical answer. I give an example of myself. When I joined, I was not even 17. So I needed the permission of my parents to stay in the temple, because I was minor. And in my great wisdom, the first thing I started preaching to my parents was that we did not go to the moon. That was my first line of argument. And of course, they were already kind of shocked. They became Hare Krishna. Then the first thing I said, we didn't go to the moon. It's like stupidity, right? And sometimes we create more agitation and envy because sometimes we act in a way which is really weird, due to fanaticism, due to tamas guna, or due to just immaturity. So it's a fact, in principle, devotees don't create enemies, but sometimes the devotees act in a way that people become more inimical than what is necessary. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, the thing is like, in my preaching world, because I'm doing a lot of Hindu preaching, and I've heard that the Singapore ban is because the Hindus were too fanatic against preaching against the demigods. And the Hindus complained to the authorities that this is not our Sanatana Dharma. They're criticizing Ganesha, Shiva, and Parvati. We don't want that. So in one sense, it is immaturity, like you said. But in other countries, like in Holland, when I was preaching there, it turns out if you actually trace who's creating the trouble, you find most of the time is the church. They find some ways too, because they feel competition. And this Hindu society is not like the other Hindus, completely, locked up somewhere, not doing anything, and nobody cares for them. But these are actually going out and converting the Christians into Hindus.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Actually, most of the time, that's the reason.
Yeah, even at the time of Lord Chaitanya in Mayapur, the Chaitanya Charitamrita Srila Prabhupada explained, it was the smartas, it was the Hindu who create problem to the Sankirtan movement. Because the Muslims, they were ruling the country and they didn't really care about what these Hindus do. But it was the Hindus who went to the Qazi, to the magistrate, and say, look at these Vaishnavas, they are corrupting our religion, they are singing the name in public, they should not do that. So yes, and the opposition mainly was coming from the smartas, not from the Muslims. The Muslims are they're like in Africa, it's very well known. The devotees were telling me, the Muslims, they will not bother you until you try to do something against them. Then they react like fire. The Christians, they're much more vocal. No, only Jesus. They really they may come to the kirtan and say, Jesus, Jesus, it's only Jesus. Even in America they still do that. But they're more, what do you call it? In one sense, they're more weak socially. Now, Muslims, they will not bother you. But if you say convert somebody, then they'll become really dangerous. Like that. So we need to consider all these things. Jai. And in Singapore, yes, preaching against the demigod might have a role. I heard from a leader that a major thing that really scared the government is that at one point the first devotees who came there say that this is spiritual communism. And Singapore is like 100% against communism. For them, see, they're there in Southeast Asia. So, there's so many countries, communist countries, Vietnam, China, right there. So they don't want to have anything to do with communism. And when they heard that the devotees said, we are in a spiritual communism, which is obviously, when we say that, they became so, whoa, they became, but that may have also a major role, yes?
And also in Singapore, when I was there, so actually the Hindus complain, because when we make a Ram Navami, Ram Vijay, so we make such a huge Ravan's statue. We build in the park, So we burn Ravan. So the people from Sri Lanka complaining about this, why you burn my Lord?
Yes,
So
yes.
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 In Bali, they worship Ravan?
No, this is in Singapore.
Singapore?
Yeah, Sri Lanka is many other also.
Yeah, it's a North Indian tradition. And in South India, they don't do that, right, Shirade? Nobody does that. Nobody, not even the Vaishnavas do that, because South India, they don't do that.
In Malaysia, they cannot preach to the Muslim. If they know we are preaching to the Muslim,
They'll ban us. Yeah. So we need to consider the world we are in. And of course, we are learning. Now we are around since, 66, now almost 60 years. Next year will be 60 years. And somehow we survived, despite ourselves. No, I mean, the devotees did obviously huge austerity, huge missionary preaching, huge sacrifices. Obviously, we need to appreciate. But we somehow survived 60 years. We are learning. We are learning. I was very inspired last year. I was invited to this communication convention, International Communication Convention. They do every year in Europe, but it's international in Gauradesh. I was really inspired by the quality, the caliber of intelligence and maturity of the devotees. Because it's easy to, to speak the theology disembodied from the situation, political, economical, cultural situation. It's easy. But these devotees, they had to deal with these people. They had to deal with these people. This, Srila Prabhupada calls them now fools and rascals. But you cannot call them fools and rascals because they are in power. And sometimes you cannot call, in one sense, you don't call anybody fool or rascal because you want them to be friendly, you want to be them open. Srila Prabhupada said, you need to be very humble to people. No, go with a straw in your mouth if it's culturally relevant. You have to be very humble. Then you present. Even Lord Chaitanya, he didn't come to Varanasi, oh, all this Mayavadi, oh, you're in Maya, you know. No, he went there, he sat where they wash the feet, then he expanded his teja, his light. So people said, no, please come, you know, why you sit there? Come sit with us, you know. We like you very much. We don't understand. Why don't you preach about Vedanta? Why do you speak about this 20 chanting? So there is a way of approaching people, and we gradually are learning. And therefore, I was very inspired to see this convention, because you see devotees that for years, for decades, have dealt with all the crises, and especially in Europe, because there are many countries. So there were a lot of crises. In Hungary, in France, in this and that. In England, they want to close Bhaktivedanta Manor just because some villager complained of the noise. It's like Germany, so many problems. I was talking in Hamburg with senior devotee like Vaidyanath Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada disciple. He's also Sachinanda Maharaj brother. And he was telling me how for many, many decades we had a very bad reputation. And it's still, because some leaders put some weapons in the temple, and so the police raided the temple, which was not necessary. There was a different situation. It was not an instruction by Srila Prabhupada to deal with the hillbillies of Appalachians. But so sometimes one mistake can affect Vaishnava and the movement for decades. So, I still have 25 minutes, but you must already be tired. So we can close a little early, unless there are some final reflections or comments. Final comment 1, final comment 2, and we have our friend.
If you look in the 10th canto, when Kansa wants to kill Devaki, then Vasudeva is in a very precarious condition. What to do now?
Mm-hmm.
And he uses sound down in Vingananda, like you said. And in a very, actually in that purport only, I haven't found it anywhere else. Prabhupada is actually describing some steps, how sound is used and done, and what steps there are. So would it not be necessary, the way you presented it, that devotees get trained in this? Because Vedic management required that. Chanakya was an expert at that. But when I was preaching in Mahabharata in Suriname on television, I realized that there is not enough clarity of these skills. We only have some stories that this king like that, but there is a whole system of education which would be practical for management's sake, I would say. Should we train that? They would also in that part, not only spiritual knowledge, but then.
Yes, just to give an analogy, when Srila Prabhupada was in Montreal and the 3 Grihastha couples were about to go to London, Gurudas and Shamasunda and Malati, Gurudas and Yamuna, and Mukunda and Janaki. That was the three couples. So he told them, look, the holy name is pure, but if you, pure and sufficient, but if you also learn a little musical skills, then it will be easier for people to approach you or to appreciate you like that. So similarly, as an analogy, yes, I think leaders at least should know that there are options. There are options that when you deal with people, either government officers or, and yes, training, of course, they should know how Srila Prabhupada dealt, because sometimes people don't know, right? We don't know unless you study, extract. So there could be a course on how to deal with government officials, how to deal with enemies, internal or external.
Is that?
Yeah, yeah, it's a talking in private. It's a very old course and needs a lot of updating. But yeah, but Prabhu was particularly stressing the traditional approach, Chanakya Pandit, Niti Shastra. Definitely, if we deal with the material world, we have to deal with in an intelligent and mature way. And yes, thank you for that. The communication courses certainly help.
Well, the thing what I was saying is that when you put it in a Vedic context, it will be much more connected to your Krishna consciousness life. You won't feel it like it's something modern and is temporary meant for this problem. Simultaneously, having said that, if it is in a Vedic context, you should give examples of practical ISKCON happenings, how that principle was applied. In this sense, the Vedic tradition will get more respected. If you have difficulty how to apply it.
Yeah, to some extent, I can understand where you're coming from. At the same time, every social interaction depends and it's informed by the principles of interdependence. In other words, let's see the good example you gave, which is very relevant. Vasudeva told Kamsa that first he preached, oh, look, we're not the body, we have to die anyway, so what's the big thing with dying? That didn't convince him fully. But then he promised, I will deliver every child. And that worked only because Vasudeva had an extraordinary good reputation as a man of integrity. So I'm just giving one example. So yes, Kamsa, although he was a demon, he accepted from Vasudeva because Vasudeva had that reputation. Even Kamsa, yeah, he's a man of honor, he's a man of his word. So okay, I let them go. Sometimes we may not have that reputation, so we may not do exactly the same thing, or we may not do the Vedic thing. Ultimately, Veda means knowledge. So anything that actually works is because there is some connection with reality, some connection with. So, like I just give an example. In New York, the devotees made a drama in front of Srila Prabhupada, and one devotee was playing guitar. And at the end, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, I think it was our Pancharadna Prabhu, I think. But anyway, one devotee asked Prabhupada, can we use guitar in our drama? Srila Prabhupada said, better a guitar played nicely than a sitar played poorly. So, yes, we can take principles from the Vedic culture or Indian culture, Indo-Vedic culture, Chanakya Pandit, and the whole ocean of Dharma Shastras, and let's see how we can maturely apply them to the circumstances. So thank you very much for your attention and patience, and we give you back 90 minutes. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai.